recording?
I'll start.
Excellent.
There we go.
And yeah, not quite sure how to go. Doo, 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 doo. Hello, welcome everyone to this wonderful talk that we're doing. I have Lauren here, the founder, the speaker, the host, the pretty much everything of She Plays Games, the podcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm so glad you're here. I think you first caught my attention with your list of 100 women within the video games industry, and then I started listening to your podcast, and I found out you have such a way of talking to people within video games, and just sort of like this excitement that you have. Let's start at the very beginning. What got you into sort of She Plays Games? How did that all come about?
Oh, wow. So, like, it's weird because it's quite a lengthy, it- it's like in the simplistic terms, I've only been doing She Plays Games for the last like 2.5 years or so. But I've been podcasting for over a decade
Oh
now.
my God!
Yeah, it's quite insane. So basically, my initial introduction into the world of podcasting was my best friend in high school, Lauren, came up to me one day and she's just like, "Yo, I have a friend who's starting a podcast and he wants me to host it, and it's about Kingdom Hearts. Do you want to come on and talk about Kingdom Hearts?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Um, so I said yes. And that is basically how it started. I worked on Kingdom Hearts Union for like a few years. And then I moved on to another show that they had called Final Fantasy Union because I'm really big into like, I was into Kingdom Hearts, but I like my life blood is Final Fantasy. And so I was in Final Fantasy Union for a while. And we started making content on YouTube about 5 years ago,
Oh my God!
and it really took off. And like we were making enough money that I didn't have to go back to my traditional job, which was nice. Like I had gone on maternity leave at a company that just wasn't very supportive, wasn't very appreciative of my contribution, so to speak. So when I had an out with Final Fantasy Union, I was just like, let's just do it. And then I did that for a couple years, and then I just sort of felt like I was missing something. I felt like I wanted something that was giving back or was fulfilling for me because a lot of the stuff I was building like sort of in or around like with my husband, which he's terrific. Like I love him to pieces. But I just really felt like, I wanted something that like we didn't have to, we didn't, I just want it to be mine. Like, I know that that sounds a bit selfish, but I was just kind of like, I just I needed to do something. And I just came up with one day, I thought, there's really a gap in the market for podcasts that specifically center around women in the games industry. Um, it's, at that time there weren't a lot of people doing what I was doing, and specifically just like people would have podcasts where they'd have a mixture, but it would be like this week they'll have this woman on, but then next week they have like a man. Not that that's like a bad thing, but it was always a mixture. So I was just like, you know what, no, I want to make it like streamlined. I want to raise the visibility of women in games because um there's really still um a lot of stuff that's quite hidden about women in games unless you're actually in the games industry yourself. There's still quite a stigma around joining the games industry as a woman, even like in games as a girl. I know I have two daughters, and it's still quite a taboo subject to be like, I am a woman and I really like playing video games. Oh, you do that. And it's just kind of like, these are people who are in their 40s who still believe this way. And it's just really kind of a sobering thought, because I just sort of think from myself, and maybe I'm just biased, but games are so ingrained in the future of what we exist like, these kids, like every single one of Allie's classmates is going to pick up a game at some point in their life on some kind of console, whether it's a mobile device, iPad. A lot of them are already doing that. Like, I think they're really missing a trick in embracing and encouraging that, and not treating it just as a hobby. Like, they won't treat it the way that they treat tennis and that type of thing, where they're just like, oh, well, I want to make them a tennis star. Yeah, but you can also make your kid into an artist, into a games developer, into a social media manager. Like, there's so many avenues into games that you can get into. So that was like my biggest thing, was not focusing on one specific track into the games industry, really trying to conquer all the different areas that you can get into the games industry, and have the people themselves tell how they got in themselves and what they like the most about their job, and then give a little bit of advice as to what they feel they've learned along the way. So that's essentially what it is. Yeah, so I'm so appreciative of everybody who listens and gets that message that I'm conveying through the podcasts. I'm so happy that that message is being conveyed to people, and everybody feels like really excited about the project that I talked to, which is it's lovely. It's really, really nice.
It's fantastic. Like, you do such a great job of like being excited about the people themselves, being knowledgeable about sort of the game industry. Like, take me to like sort of the beginning of this whole of the podcast itself. Like, what is it like? How do you? What are some of the questions that you're looking for? What are some of the goals that you're trying to hit? And then what is it like to actually have to do this, like, week in and week out? Like, how do you sort of like approach people who might not have heard of your podcast, or might be hesitant because there's been like, so many panels out there. It's like, women in games. It's like, how do you sort of like breach that, where it's like, look, this is going to be a very different sort of like conversation that we're having. We really want to celebrate who you are, versus focus on like, a gender.
Completely. I think that is the thing. I think like one of the sort of hidden agendas that I had in myself, or one of the things I always said about my podcast, is that I didn't want it to be just a women in games thing. Like, even though I say like it's about women in games, I didn't want, like, I know that that's such a shallow like idea of what it is to celebrate, right? Like, I can just sort of say like, doesn't it suck to be a woman in games sometimes? Yeah, end of conversation, end of show. Surprise, like, I really wanted to get something that is a bit more juicy, a bit more just sort of vulnerable. And when I first started out, yeah, it was a lot of pitching. It was a lot of going to people and being like, can you come on my show? Can you talk to me? Please talk to me. And now it's really been a good word of mouth. Honestly, like, a lot of people have really appreciated how I've approached it. I always try to keep my guests as safe as possible, and I always say that, like, the last thing I want to do is to get anybody in trouble. So I try to leave topics that are up for like sort of debate, or what topics that make people feel uncomfortable. That's what I kind of steer away from. I try to keep it quite light, but just happy, and just really try to focus on the positive aspects of what they do, and try to not necessarily completely ignore the toxicity that happens, but not make that like the main focus. And um with that, I mean, all of my questions are really tailored to the person. I maybe have like one question that I use every time, which is always just, what's the last bit of advice that I've been doing lately with this season is just like, what's some last bit of advice that you can give? Because I think that that's always something that, um, catches something that we haven't covered. And but other than that, it's really tailored towards what do people want to know about the role? What do people want to know about the individual? One of the things I do, which I've started doing recently when I like sort of get into a bit of a mind block for questions or I need inspiration, is go on Reddit AMAs and see what people are asking. Like, see, what do people ask about in developer AMAs, or what do people ask about in the artist AMAs? So, and how can I apply it to the question in the podcast and make it that something that they can talk about openly? And everybody also gets the questions a day before, which helps.
Yes.
And there's been a couple where like where I've had to have questions approved by the studios themselves. I know Riot needed that, and Insomniac, of course. But so far, everybody's been really okay with it, just because I guess because I always so hardly focus on stuff that's not going to get my guests into trouble. I just
Absolutely.
don't want to get my guests into trouble. That's just the worst feeling.
That is very kind of you. Uh, so when it comes to you're talking about like the questions and going to the AMAs, like what are some of the questions? Like what are some of the big questions people do have about developers, or like what are some of the best questions
Mm,
that you think like come into it? Because it feels like there's there's always a panel or there's always some sort of like getting into games. How do you get into games?
yeah.
Things like that. You have your standard sort of things, but what are some of the questions that you find that are really thoughtful or really like different where it's like, okay, let's take this from another direction. How do you start into games? How early do you start into games? Like, do you need a
Mm.
prototype? Do you need education? Like, what are things like what are some of the questions that you find are most intriguing, or you find your guests liking the most going into it?
It really depends on the guests themselves. I guess for me I really enjoy asking the sort of like what games did you start with? Because I really love hearing about people's history with games and sort of like what who it was that introduced them into games initially, versus outside of that, like was it a sibling, was it a parent, and you get such different answers from everybody. The university question does come up every now and then. um I try not to make it so that I'm just kind of like, so why didn't you go to university? Like I always feel like so like, oh, is that a bit too harsh for me to just be like I'm not trying to be harsh, but it's like that sort of weird balancing act of like, I'm not saying this to be like, you didn't go to university, like what are you doing? I'm saying it to be like, oh, so you didn't go to university, like, is that a viable way? So like I try to always sense check my questions so that I don't I ask them in like the best light and ask them, in the best way to where they are like, um where they're not going to take it the wrong way, if you know what I mean. um I love the advice question. I love asking them for advice because you never know what they're going to come out with that regard. Um, I also like I did a recent one with Leslie from Oculus, but she's quite big on TikTok. She because she's done stuff with narrative in the past. She designed Braum in League of Legends, and I was just kind of like, what kind of what kind of characters do you like designing the most? Like what characters do you like talking about the most or creating? And like her answers were just, it was just a really lovely conversation to sort of talk about her interests and what her ideal character, even though she's not necessarily like a narrative designer fully, she's a producer. um it was nice to hear about her creativity. And then Mary Kenny as well, as always. I've had her on twice now, and hearing from her and how she approaches characters, and then also how she's pushing boundaries with like people like Haley in Spider-Man, making a deaf character in a game and fighting for that character to exist. I just think like it was just really cool to hear how she approached that, and how she's constantly trying to push boundaries in terms of her character creation and world building. um but yeah, I really think those kind of questions, what you're most proudest of as well, like what have you been most proud of, because I think a lot of the times people don't really often think about it. Like I think some people get quite caught off guard by that question, because a lot of us suffer from imposter syndrome, and we sort of carry on with a brave face and sort of don't think about the things that we've actually don't take the time to think about the things that we've actually accomplished. And I just think it's a nice time for my guests to reflect on themselves and really think about like what they are most happy with. What is something that they're proud of, and help them feel good about that.
Well, let's take that time now. What are you most proud of for the work that you've done? Because you've
Yeah.
got this, you have the podcast, and we'll get into a little bit of the list in a little bit. But like, for all the people that you've talked to, like what is like a moment that you've seen that you're proud of, or like as you said, like now it's sort of like word of mouth. Like now, like other
Yeah.
people are coming for, I mean, coming to you, being like, I want to talk to you about like things that are going on. Like what what feeds you when you are making these podcasts, or when you're doing the list, or when you're speaking out? Like what what keeps you going?
I mean, being a podcaster is it's so solitary, isn't it? Especially now, considering like we're in COVID times where you can't actually go, and you don't always get the chance to go and meet people in person. But like when I go to events and I introduce myself to people and then they say that they know the podcast, I think those moments really just make me smile so much, because I never expect it. I never expect somebody to know who I am, and the fact that like, when I first started this podcast, I'd go into an event and have no clue who anybody was, and nobody knew who I was. And I'd just be feeling like lost. Like I remember I went to a Women in Games conference, was one of the first conferences I ever went to. And thank goodness for Mary Claire, who heads Women in Games over here. She gave me a free ticket. She just for what like she's just amazed. She believed in what I was doing enough in order to give me a free ticket to this conference. And I'm eternally grateful for everything that Women in Games has done for me so far. And you know, I physically just picked myself up and went over to a table and introduced myself to people, which I'm not that type of person. I'm such an introvert, like that intro extrovert person. And I actually did networking, and it's not something that I really had down before. And so I think that is the thing. I think the beauty of just feeling like people appreciate what I'm doing. And um yeah, it's just nice. It's just nice to be acknowledged for what you're doing and what you enjoy doing. I think has been some of the greatest moments. And like I've made so many friends over the last couple of years, who I will see now, in person, either at events or just hanging out. And if I hadn't started SPG, those people wouldn't I wouldn't have been able to reach those people. So um, yeah, I think that's probably my proudest thing, is just the connection that I've had with people who I've not who I didn't in the past have any reason to be connected with, other than me just sitting at the sidelines and being like, wow, you're really cool for working in the games industry. I'm so excited about you. You know?
Oh well, okay. So now we have this podcast. You have interviewed just a lot of great women within the industry. But now let's shift it over to the list.
Yeah.
100 women in gaming. How did you what was in your mind when you were coming up with the list?
Um, yeah, it's a lot, and it's great because like there's a lot of people who weren't able to get onto the list, right? Like it's all done through nominations, from other people in the games industry or people who appreciate other women in games, essentially. And yeah, we my husband and I kind of tag teamed the coding aspect of it, because I am not a coder, but we basically went through with a fine tooth comb, um, verified everybody was, legitimate and that type of thing. And as we did with last year, we really tried to vet for people who maybe weren't heard of, but like we wanted to represent as many people as we could who weren't from the US and UK, or Europe. Because I think that's the thing. I think it's really easy to have that like sideline, like peripheral vision cut off and just focus solely on people who are from like US, UK, and that type of thing. So that's what like I didn't want to be. And I feel like we tried last year, and then we tried even harder this year to make sure that not only was it diverse from like sort of race, nationality, but also just in terms of globally, that we had people who were from different countries represented, and enough of them as well. Um, and yeah, it's just been really fantastic. And I think the other thing that's nice about it is that it's not age focused. There's been so many times where we've had people on the list who they they are out of the age range of being represented in the 30 under 30 type of list. Like, I didn't get started with anything until after I turned 30. And it's just kind of like, you do feel like, oh, okay, like that's an opportunity that I can't have because I only got my life sorted in the last like 3 years, like it's this weird feeling that you get when like if this is, because it does feel like a really big opportunity to be able to be on these types of lists, to be recognized, because you're recognized through by a lot of people, through a lot of publications. There's a lot of opportunities there. So having people come to me and be like, I never get nominated for any of these lists. Like I really love the fact that I got on this list, and it's just been really like so humbling for me. And uh I love to hear that. And I've also had people, like I just had someone named Sarah MacDad on the show, who works at Focus Entertainment, and she was featured on the list last year. And she said that, it really opened doors for her because it was something that she could say about. And um, she got people to, she would get people's eyes on her for recognition and that type of thing. So it's just like it's opening up that opportunity for people to shout about something and also to be able to share and get that praise from their peers that they deserve to hear like more often. But it's just doesn't happen all the time. So to give somebody a reason to be celebrated is a fantastic thing through SPG 100, and I'm more than happy to do it. And one of the things we changed this year as opposed to last year was last year we just focused, like, it's quite like a simple thing, but we focused on getting the imagery right on the site, like getting all these images lined up and stuff. But from an SPO perspective and for searching perspective, it was so hard for people to like, because I didn't want to have duplicates from last year. It was so hard for people to like search to see who was nominated because I just had images. So this year we decided, you know what, no, we're gonna have them written in text so that it's easy to see, easy to search for names. So yeah, so that for future references, people can just refer to that list and just go like just search on the website for those who are featured and that type of thing. So yeah, that's basically
No,
SPG 100.
it is an amazing list. I was just wondering, is there anyone on the list, because you have gone through, like you said, there's such a diversity of people, not just like founders, but everything from QA, even like media itself. You have a
Mm.
couple of like editors, you have a couple of editor editor in chief of like different sites, things like that. Who on the list do you think um, uh, could use a little bit more of a spotlight, or like who are you excited seeing on the list this year?
Mm. I mean, it's hard to choose just one, right? Like I just always like looking at everybody, so many of these people like to have done so much. That I just I can't do. But
The
I will say, like, one of the things that broke my heart sort of last year was the lack of representation of people from Australia. Because I do it all through a nominational basis. It's hard for me to know, like, it was hard for me to discount the people who people nominated and also try to appease or try to find people who were not nominated from other countries. So, like, it broke my heart when I heard from one person named Diana Senna, who is the founder of Women of Xbox. It was really great to have her on the list this year because she has done so much in Australia to help women find safe places to chat about like women in games and just chat about games in general, just creating that space for people to talk about games. I really love all of the stuff that she's doing. And yeah, it's just there's just so many people who are featured, like Joe Haslam, JC Lau was a really great one who obviously did the What a Game Dev Looks Like for the last couple of years as well. Um, so it's always everybody is just I'm so I
Absolutely,
love them
they're all your
all.
beautiful children, and we are not going to pick
Yeah.
one. Let's go into, obviously, over GDC. I think there was a large there was a hashtag like what a game dev looks like, and there
Mm,
were a lot of different people who came up with ideas of like who is a game dev and who's not. And
yeah.
I think in your list you highlight everyone. Like you're
Yeah.
from people that you would obviously expect, developers, coders, but also people that like in marketing and in PR, in music. I mean, things that sort of like hide in the gray area. Like, was there any pushback from that you heard of from other people being like, oh, so and so, this obviously isn't a game
Mm.
dev, or this, why did you highlight this person, this job versus who's a real game dev or something like that.
Oh, completely. Yeah, no. Thankfully, no. Like, touch wood, I didn't have any discourse from that. The discourse, though, from the what a game dev looks like was really heartbreaking because, it's such an exclusive, it's such a it's so thoughtless to attack someone or make someone feel bad because their skill set suits a certain aspect of developing a game to being like on the front line, like as a programmer or coder and that type of thing. Like, I mean, obviously, yes, like coders are so important, but you need people to QA their games. You need people to work in the producer roles to keep everything organized. You need artists, you need marketing people, because if people can't see your game, no one's gonna buy it. Like, there's such a specific, like, it's so broad, and it has to be broad because at the end of the day, the game development machine cannot sustain itself by limiting the terminology to what a game developer or what a game dev is. And I would even throw in content creators in there because at the end of the day, they're becoming such an influential bit about what games, um how games sustain and be continue to be popular. I mean, you see so much content about Elden Ring that doesn't just get there. Like, it's so many people sharing their experiences with Elden Ring and on Twitch and YouTube. Um, I think that there's a weird elitism, and it stems from not only roles, but it also stems from studios where people get just a bit elitist about where they are, which I really wish could be stamped out a bit because everybody's journey is different and not everybody wants to be a coder and not everybody wants to be at a AAA studio and not everybody wants to even be at a studio. There's a lot of great things about being at a distributor, a place that distributes or helps to be like a third party developer to help develop games for studios that don't have the staff in order to work on this other project or something like that, like outsourcing companies and stuff. um yeah, it's really disappointing. But at the same time, I was so proud to see so many people really stamp out some of the negativity and discourse about that. It was really, really lovely. And I think that's the beautiful thing about what's going on at the moment is that even though there's still people who believe those kind of things, they're quickly being like, if they post on social media about it, they're being quickly shut down. And um I just believe wholeheartedly that there is the definition of what it means to be in game dev is broadening, and it's only because that's how much games need it nowadays in order to sell and keep gaming alive, really.
Absolutely, I think you're completely right. It's great to see there's a broader system now
Mm.
of people, as well as like the people we call gamers, like who
Mm.
is playing games, and bringing more people into that sort of realm and sort of world only makes it a better system.
Exactly. Being
Uh,
open-minded is just my philosophy. There's very little that I will not open myself to, right? Like, I'm just as much a console gamer as I am a mobile gamer as I am a PC gamer. I appreciate everything for very different things, and um I think life is too short to not open yourself to every experience that you can, within reason, obviously. And so opening yourself to an ideology that is more about appreciating or finding the interest in things that maybe you haven't heard before is always a good thing.
Obviously, this is the second list. There's going to be a third list. Let's just put it out there.
Yeah.
What lessons have you learned from doing this list now that you want to incorporate into the next list?
I mean, it's I like this list has been so great and people have been so amazing. I think the thing that impresses me so much is that I've had 200 people, 200 people of marginalized gender represented a on these lists, and I that wasn't everybody who was nominated, like I had way more who were nominated outside of that. So it's just like it's incredible to think that continuing this on, this will be, a surefire list to say to studios essentially like, oh, you think that there's not enough diversity out there? Like, look, like this is literally a list of, they're literally lists of 100 apiece people who are happy to be in working in the games industry. And there's no it's just, yeah, it's just really love. I love learning about new people getting into this industry. I love learning new stories, and um just bringing more and more women into my focus of like what I do. I mean, it's great for content for the podcast as well, because I'm just like, oh, well, I haven't had that person on the show before, so it'd be really cool to talk to them. Like it all helps with everything. And yeah, who knows what's going to happen next year? I mean, I'm really excited about who gets nominated for our next list and beyond.
Well, let's talk about, like, go back to the podcast for a little bit, because it seems like you've gotten a lot of people who are spreading the word of mouth. You
Mm.
you have the people that you've reached out to. You have this list of 100 people that you want for the podcast. Who is on your list of people that you want on the podcast? Like, let's put it out there into the world. Let's shout it out. We got connections. We got people who are listening to us right now.
Oh, of course.
Let's hear, like, who do you want? Who do you want
Oh,
right now? Let's
I
pitch
mean,
this.
not to like pigeonhole to just Japan, but I have quite an affinity towards Japanese titles. And so, I mean, to be able to speak to someone like Yoko Shimomura would be incredible. Also because she's just awesome. Like like seeing other interviews with her. She's just such a cool lady. And I would love to share a beer with her and just chat about life. And like I remember I watched this really great documentary on that Red Bull Gaming released about um uh audio in the games industry and music in the games industry, and she was one of the people featured, and she had the story about how she like had a pulley system with a bag where they were locked inside the studio in which they were working in. They were locked in because they stayed there all night, but they had a deadline to meet. So they had the guy who was delivering their disc or whatever it was ready at the bottom of their window, and they had to create like a sort of weird bag pulley system to
Oh
put
God.
the file, the little thing in, and put it out the window and send down to this guy who went off on a bike with it. And oh, just hearing her go on about that, I was just like, oh my gosh, you're adorable. I just freaking love you. And then on that note as well, Ikumi Nakamura, who obviously was um working on Ghostwire, but now has moved to her own company, Unseen. I just, you know, yeah, I think either of them. I know that they're quite a reach because I'd have to get a translator somehow in order to be able to speak. I'm learning Japanese. I really am trying to learn Japanese, but I'm nowhere near the conversational level that I need to be for a interview. But yeah, I think they would be incredible. But yeah, and then other than that, I mean, to be able to speak to somebody like Frost Curran, Stephanie from the saga, like yeah, there's some really, really amazing, amazing women. Jayanne Lopez, who's from Black Twitch UK, Black Girl Gamers. Um, there's some really, really incredible people who I'd love to have on the show and haven't yet. And yeah, yeah. So fingers crossed for
We're
the
gonna
future.
let's work on it. Let's make these things happen.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Let's
Uh,
find a Japanese translator.
we can do that. We have the technology. We
Yes.
have the people. And then before we leave, before we go through everything, what are you playing? What are you excited about nowadays in the world of
Oh my
gaming?
God. Oh, I feel like I'm really typical in saying like freaking Elden Ring,
That's
but oh my
fine. That's
God,
fine.
it's just
What are your tips on Elden Ring for the people out there?
oh, just stick with it. It's just like, I have been a fan of Souls for ages, like absolutely ages. I started with Demon Souls back in the day.
Mhm.
And like Elden Ring is just such a lovely like evolution of what From Software started with and what they got to. And they've always been so adamant about their vision for what the game should be. And I just love them for it. I think that they're just really amazing and incredible. And in terms of like playing the game, it's hard. Like I won't mince words. Follow a guide, pick mage if you're really scared. But take your time, try to enjoy the journey. Don't be worried about the fact that like I mean, I'm having it right now because my husband is further along than I am in the game, and it's pissing me off. But it's okay. We're gonna live with it. We're going to accept it and just say, no, I'm on my own journey, and I will
Yes.
get to that point when I'm there. But it's fine. But yeah, other than that, dodge roll is your friend. But yeah, I think I have said this before to somebody else about like who wasn't really a Souls gamer before. And I'd say if you absolutely can, I'd say start with Demon Souls, the Demon Souls remake, or find Demon Souls somewhere and play that first because that game introduces you to the mechanics quite well. It really surprised me how somebody who's not played a Souls game before can't work the controls because they're so ingrained into me and how I operate because I've been playing Souls games forever, and I really took for granted the fact that like, oh wait, this isn't natural for everybody to play with the controller this way. Like the setup is different to what people expect. I didn't think that, but I guess it is the case, but I'm just so used to it. So I think like starting with Demon Souls is like the simplest way to really ease you into it so that you can appreciate Elden Ring. But yeah, that's probably
That's
that's kind
perfect.
of my thing.
That is
Yeah.
absolutely perfect. I love it. I have not gone into to Elden Ring as of yet.
Yeah.
I'm in Tunic world right now.
Oh, Tunic is so good too, though. I've just started playing that today, honestly, right
Oh,
today.
Tunic is
So good.
it's so adorable,
It
and I
is. It
will.
has just amount of like Souls plus like Zelda feels anyway. So
It is a game that is, you will find things in there, or you'll find paths where you're like, how did I get back to where I was?
yeah.
As well as it is a mystery. There are so many like hidden little things. The instruction booklet that you have in there. There's
Yeah.
far more to it than it appears, and it has its own little like mystery. Speaking of someone like who
Oh,
loves sort of like Japanese games as well, having to go
yeah.
through Japanese games and just sort of like look at stuff and be like, well, I don't quite understand everything, but I'm going to try my
Yeah.
best. It is very much that kind of booklet, and I would say it is Souls, it is action, but it is a mystery and a puzzle at
Yeah.
its heart.
Yeah.
As well as if you are not a Souls or action kind of person, you can absolutely turn on invincibility or endless stamina in order to get through it.
Boom. Yeah,
Exactly,
no,
exactly.
it's just so cute. I love my little fox warrior.
He's so adorable, and he always
I
looks up
know.
at like things that like to catch your attention. Where
I
he's like,
know.
"Where are you looking, little fox? What do you see that I don't
I
see?"
know. I know. My daughters are just so they're just so sad whenever they see his fox mommy because they're just like, "Oh, he wants to just get back to his mommy." And I'm just like, "It's okay. We'll get it back to his mommy.
We'll get
We'll
him back.
do it. We'll do
It's
it."
it's all so good.
Yeah.
To end, I'm going to end the same way you do, where it's like, what piece of advice do you have to other people out there who are looking to get into either podcasting or the games industry, or to
Mm.
like just keep making incredible content like you have been?
So I mean, first and foremost with podcasting, it's like setup is always kind of like, you don't have to have the best gear to start. Blue Yetis are awesome for podcasting and they're not super expensive, but if you can have a mic, that is the first step so that people can hear you speak. But always when you do podcasts, make it about something you love. Don't play to the audience all the time. Make it something that you want to express, and the people who want to hear it will come, if that makes sense. Like the people who are your fans will appreciate it. Obviously market it,
Yes.
but ultimately, like, just keep it as authentic as you can. And outlines are incredible as well. I always use an outline for my podcast, um, and just have all my questions ready and that type of thing, my intros and all that type of stuff. And then also, if you do a podcast like this where you're talking with people, um, listen. And this is something that like even I sort of struggled with initially, but like when you have a conversation, like listening to the other person, it's something that's really been so effective in how I've conducted my podcasts. And it's something that I always just sort of go back to think, like, like my listening, my finding the questions and what people are saying and that type of thing. um yeah, I think that that's such an important step to podcasting. And then in terms of the games industry, you know it's hard, but you get there. And I think depending on what you want to get into, what aspect, try to find somebody who can mentor you. Like, a lot of the times people in the games industry are really approachable and really kind. And if you have like a question about a role or something, generally they're like really happy to help. And there's even mentorship programs that can help. I know over here we have the Limit Break mentorship. There's also Code Coven, which has its own intro to game making course. There's Women in Games International, which is offering a lot of aspects, but mentoring and having those people, meeting those people who can be like effectively your cheerleaders is so important and
Mhm.
so beneficial to you. Um, so definitely do that. And then so, in terms of just like life itself, it's a hard one, but I know I need to do it more, but like listen to listen to you and don't try to match your lane to somebody else's lane because all of us are on completely different journeys, and you might think that somebody is getting ahead somewhere ahead of you, and you get all paranoid and anxious, and you just sort of think like, oh, this is impossible. This feels impossible. Like, how can I get through this? It's okay,
Mhm.
you know, appreciate and send love to those people that because it's important to raise each other up, especially when the other person is also is doing well. When your friend is doing well, who's in like a sort of similar aspect to you, it's important to recognize that and to say, how much you're proud or happy for them as well as for yourself. Um, so yeah, so just try your best to not focus so much on what other people are doing, and focus on you, and keep a smile file. I realize I'm coming out with I've just had so many episodes, but like have a smile file as well.
A
Anytime
smile
you've
file.
gotten
What is in your smile file?
so a smile file is a folder on your drive where you basically can collect screen grabs of anything that has been positive said to you, that you can capture. This could be like a really happy tweet. This could be an email that somebody sent to you where they were really appreciative. This could be a podcast rating. This could be a LinkedIn message, just anything that when you're feeling low about yourself that you can go to and say like, hey, actually this person at this time said this about me, and like that's the person that I should be listening to right now, not the sort of demon that's kind of taken over me for right now, making me feel sad and upset. Yeah, I think all that fun stuff is a lot to digest and take in.
It is. It is. It
But
is.
yeah, but I hope that some of that will
It's beautiful. I love
help.
every bit of that. And for people who cannot get enough of this, where can they find you online as well as your podcast?
Sure, of course. So my podcast is She Plays Games, and you can find me on Twitter and TikTok at She Plays Podcast, and then sheplaysgames.co is our official website. And then as for me, you can hear about all my fun takes on various aspects of the games industry at Level Up Lauren, which is my personal Twitter. And yeah, I just talking a lot about about everything going on, mostly like retweeting really funny clips of Elden Ring and Final Fantasy bits as well. So if that's what you're into, you can follow me there as well.
It's what I'm completely into. So thank you so much for being here today, and hopefully we can get you some of the people that you want on your podcast, as well as
Yeah.
encourage more women to get into games. So thank you so much for this, and
Oh, thank
good
you. Thank
luck
you so much for
for,
having me.
of course, and good luck with the many podcasts that you have yet to come.
Oh, thank you so much. Same to you.